Hello everybody, welcome back to Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course, Lesson Book Level 1. This video is Lesson 87A. We are going to cover pages 108, 109, and part of page 110. In our last piece in this book, we're going to split this one into two lessons since it's such a long piece. And this piece is titled Chattanooga Choo Choo. All right, so welcome back and congratulations. You did it. You are officially at the last piece in this book. But before we graduate from lesson 1 here, we got our work cut out for us. So there is a lot going on in this piece, and that is why I've actually divided it into two lessons. So this is lesson 87A, and we will conclude with lesson 87B. So again, I'm going to cover pages 108, 109, and on page 110, I'm going to cover the first and second line. And if you look at the end of the second line on page 110, you can see at the end of the line, there's a little key signature change there with these two naturals indicating that we're going back to C major from 1 flat, F major, which you can see is printed there at the beginning of that line. So that's a good stopping point, I think. So this first lesson is going to be a little bit longer, but in lesson 2, we'll learn the rest of the piece, and then we'll talk about tying the entire piece together. So one of the things that's new about this piece that you haven't encountered before in this book is it's 4 pages. This is your first piece, I believe, that actually has a page turn in the middle of the piece, there at the bottom of 109. And it's not at a great, spot to turn a page. And most of the time with page turns, they never are at a great spot. And when I mean a great spot, like the end of a section that, we were looking at the end of the second line on page 110, that'd be a great spot to turn the page and maybe have like a second in the music to do that. But you don't really have much time at the bottom of 109. Now, if you look at the last measure, you do have a tie there, and you're holding through beats 3 and 4. Now we're in 4/4 time, 4 beats in the measure. So you do have a moment there where both hands are holding. Now you might be saying, well, how do I turn the page if I'm holding with both hands? Well, even though this piece doesn't use pedal, you could actually hold the pedal there, and while the pedal's down, you can be turning the page. Now, that being said, that still took entirely too much time. So ultimately, what you want to do, if you can, is just photocopy page 110, 111 and spread out all 4 sheets there in front of you. Now, some of you might be on a keyboard or something where you don't have enough room to do that. And I'm still going to teach you how to deal with page turns. But I'm going to save that for when we actually get to that spot in the music. And that's really going to occur when we put the hands together. Because obviously, if you're playing one-handed, you can use your other hand to turn the page. But we'll talk more about page turns when we get to the bottom of page 109. So going back to the page, top of page 108, let's look at a few things before we start looking at notes. So like with most pieces, our melody is in the right hand. And the melody begins on the second line, second measure. And you can see the words there. You actually see 2 sets of lyrics, so there is a repeat. So what happens with the road map is you're going to start at the very beginning and play what is a 4-measure introduction. And on the second line, second measure, you start playing your melody. Well, that goes all the way to the bottom of page 108. And if you look at the last 2 measures at the bottom of 108, we've got our first ending in the last 2 measures. So you are going to play those 2 measures the first time through. That first ending means literally play this the first time through. There's a repeat sign. Now that repeat does not go back to the beginning of the piece. It goes back to the second line, second measure, back to verse 2 essentially. And you can see the repeat signs with the 2 dots facing to the right. That's where you're repeating back. So don't play the introduction. Again, go back to second line, second measure. Now the notes are all the same. The words are different. But when you get the second time through down to page 108, the bottom line, you're going to play the first measure, and then you're going to skip over to the top of page 109 where it says second ending. So you're going to skip the last 2 measures at the bottom of 108 when you're playing this the second time through. So again, that essentially means play the first time only, and then when you go to the top of page 109, those first 2 measures mean play the second time through only. Now at this point, At the top of 109, you're just going to keep going. There's no more repeats going back. So you're going to play all the way through 109. Now, when you get to the top line of 109, the last measure, notice there is a key change there. There's only one other lesson we ever had key changes within the piece, and that was when we played He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. We played it in the key of G, C, and then F. So Chattanooga Choo Choo starts in the key of C, no sharps, no flats in our key signature, but when you get to the top of 109, last measure, you've got one flat. So that's going to be F major. So just remember, all B's are going to be flat unless you see a B natural. So your mind sort of has to work like a switch at this point. You're switching over from C major to F major. Now, if you scan the music from the beginning of the piece, you'll actually notice that even though you're in the key of C major, there are quite a few B flats. Now, I'm not going to go into the theory behind that, but it's not like out of the clear blue, you haven't been playing flats. You actually have been. Now, they're not all going to be B flats, but there are going to be some. So I'm saying that because that's going to maybe help prepare you a little bit mentally so that when you get to the top of 109, it doesn't completely throw you off that now you're playing B flats. So we're going to go through page 109, and I don't have copies here, so I'm flipping this page. Top of 110, we're going to go the top line and then the second line. Like I said, we'll finish this lesson at the end of the second line. And that's why there are these two naturals reminding us that at the end of the second line, we're no longer going to be in the key of F, but when we start the third line, we're going to be back to C major. And then when we do lesson 87B, it just continues there from the third line all the way to the end. Like I said, there's no other repeats or any jumping back and forth. Okay, so we said there are 4 beats per measure. Now this is a piece you're going to want to count 1 and 2 and. There's a lot of eighth notes. There's syncopation. There are rests. It's really tricky. The other thing about this piece is it says at the bottom of page 108, like a lot of our pieces, a short note played quickly. Oh, no, that's talking about a grace note. I'm sorry. Wrong thing. Look at the top of the page where it says Chattanooga Choo Choo. Underneath, it says moderate swing rhythm. Now, I think this is the first time they've done this. And this is how you're going to see it in the music from here on out. When you swing eighth notes. So here are straight eighth notes. 1 and 2 and. But here's swing. 1 and 2 and. That's that long, short, long, short. And they've always told us at the bottom of the page on a lot of pieces, you may swing the notes, right? Long, short, long, short. Or they say play a bit unevenly. But the correct musical way to go about this is where they put 2 eighth notes equals this quarter note, eighth note with a little triplet over it. You see that where it says moderate swing rhythm? So without dissecting and getting into why it says that, as long as you see that printed at the beginning of a piece of music, that essentially means swing your eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3. And to be more specific, it doesn't necessarily mean just swing your eighth notes. It means the entire piece is swung. And that's what you need to remember. Not just that the eighth notes are being swung, which is what they're indicating, but it technically means you're swinging the entire piece. So 1 and 2 and 3. That means anything that is on an and is shifted, right? Anything that's on an and is shifted. It's not even anymore. So that doesn't necessarily have to be an eighth note. You know, that could be a quarter note that comes in on the and rather than, like, say, on beat 1. So we may see some of that in this piece. We'll obviously examine that further when we dig in. Now, what it does say at the bottom, it says a short note played quickly before the main note is called a grace note. Now, this is new for us. So let's check this out. So this is only going to occur a couple of times throughout the piece. It's the same 2 notes in the right hand. So you're going to be up high here. And you've got an F sharp with your second finger, which is the grace note. So you see how the grace note's written? It's real tiny. It's got like a little slash through it. But the G with your third finger is, in fact, the important note. So what grace notes are is it's decoration. It's ornamentation, actually, in musical terms. I think I've used this analogy once before. the G's are your, let's say, your Christmas tree. You can't have, I mean, how do I word this? Well, you can't have an ornament on your tree unless you don't have a good tree, right? So the G's, you need to examine the G's first. The G's in this case are right on beat 2, 3, 4. So what I'm saying is the big notes come in on the big beats. The grace note is played just before. Just before. Now, when we practice the grace notes, sometimes you need to not practice the grace notes and practice playing just the big notes. You might even have to do that when we put the hands together. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but this is just for example. When I put the hands together without the grace note, the F sharp, it's all quarter notes, and it's going to go like this. You need to make sure that that is solid first, and that is our tree. Then you can hang up your ornament. So when I played the grace note, you still heard this G came in with my left hand. So for example, you don't want to do this. That's wrong. When I did that, I was putting the grace note on the beat. So what I'm getting at is when you deal with grace notes, keep your eye on the big note, the important note. That's what the music really is. That's your Christmas tree, right? The grace note is just fancy ornamentation. It sounds pretty cool. Just like your Christmas tree looks great when it's decorated. But those ornaments mean nothing if you don't have a solid, steady tree to hang them on. So you get what I'm saying? So if you're having a hard time practicing the grace note and the big note together, take away the grace note, make sure you got the big note first, and make sure you can even do them with both hands first. Now, let's dig into how to do a grace note, because I've been talking about how to practice it, but how do we do it? So like I said, the G is right on the beat. Now, fingering is everything, and they give us good fingering, 2 and 3. When you play a grace note to a big note, you can't do this. What I'm doing there is I'm making it choppy. Now, if you look closely on the page, underneath the grace note, underneath the F sharp and the G, there's a tiny little tie. And you're almost always, or not a tie, it's a slur, excuse me. These are different notes, so it's a slur. You're almost always going to see that. And the reason for that is it's a reminder that it has to be very smooth. Now, the grace note has no time of its own. It's completely out of time. What it is it's played as quickly as you can just before our main note. They're almost played, almost at the same time. The way I've described it to a lot of my students over the years is try to play them together and be sloppy about it. Like, be sloppy, like hit the F sharp just slightly before. It's almost simultaneous, right? Now, some people take a little bit longer time, like that. Some people, it almost is simultaneous. But you don't want to do this. And you hear the difference? All of a sudden, it sounds horrible. Now, part of that is because I'm holding on to that grace note. You're not supposed to hold on to it. Lean into the big note. Now, look at my hand and my wrist and all that. I'm dropping into it, and I can actually slide back a little bit if I want. So if you slide a little bit, that may actually make it a little bit easier than just simply dropping into it. I like the slide actually because the black key is shorter than the white key, right, on the piano, right? The white key extends further. So if I'm sliding towards the white key, I stay on the white key and I'm pushing off of the black key, and that's why this sliding effect can be very useful. Now, I would try to minimize it like that. I wouldn't try to do, a huge movement, because your sound is going to start losing control, and it's going to start sounding maybe louder or heavier than what you want to play. So it's another technique that does take time to develop. So don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. But again, you got to follow just some of these simple rules first. And the most important rule is that rule number 1, the grace note does not come on the beat. It comes just before. And remember, the note you're aiming for, the G, is that main note on the beat. So the grace note is just before. Now, you do want to make sure you know both of your notes and you got the right fingering. But as soon as you do that, you don't want to hop between them. So like I'm saying, you want to go smooth. And like I said, it's almost like you're sloppily, is that a word? Sloppily? Sloppily playing them at the same time, and they don't quite come at the same time. But everything leans towards the G. Okay, and the G is long. It's a quarter note. It's not going to be, sometimes you'll experience that, but in this song, you don't have to worry about it. You actually get to hold on to that G. So you're much lighter on this F sharp 2, and you're leaning into that G with more weight. So feel like lighter second finger, heavier third finger, maybe even the third finger in this side of the hand has more weight too, so you can lean into that. Okay? And like I said, the other thing is don't do that because you'll notice it and everyone else in the room will too right away. So that's not it. Now when you put the hands together, we haven't done the left hand, but like I was saying, you might want to review it. The big notes first. Make sure, in this case, that they're right with the quarter notes in the left hand. And then go back and add the grace notes. But make sure they're not together. Make sure. So if you have to break it up like this, see, I'm playing it choppy, but I'm doing this so that I can get my big notes together in both hands. If you need to do that at first, that's fine. Once you feel comfortable with that, then start putting it together. Okay, good. So we have that in the second measure and again in the fourth measure. And let's just focus on the introduction here altogether. That's the only thing you have in the right hand. Now the left hand pattern, which you're actually going to see this in other measures on this page, is not too difficult. The left hand pattern is in fact a pattern. And it's the same pattern every measure. What you're doing is you're starting out with a fifth, a C and a G, down there below middle C, 1 octave below C. So you've got C and G. And remember, these are all quarter notes. And then you've got C and A. So you're expanding the hand to a 6. And then you have, this is actually called a flat 7. Here's a 7. C to B, but C to B flat. And there's that B flat I was telling you about. That's not in the key of C, but you're going to see some B flats here anyways. And again, it's the same fingering, 5 and 1. And then beat 4, you're going back to what you had on beat 2, which was C and A. So it's C and G, C and A, C and B flat, C and A. Now, mind the B flat, mind your position of the hand, so you're not down here on the edge of the keys, and then you have to come all the way up. If you're higher up, you can get there a little bit sooner. Now, it's quarter notes. It's not marked staccato, but the style of this piece, eventually, but you can do it sooner if you feel up to it. I would start making this light. It's going to actually go a long way if we make this light rather than... That kind of makes it drag in the mud a little bit more. But if you make it a little bit bouncier, hints of staccato, it actually changes the style and picks up the bounce and the excitement a little more. So I think that goes a long way, and I would do that even though it's not marked. So once you've got that left-hand pattern down, you've got it for the whole intro. And like I said, in measure 2, practice putting the hands together. You got it all by itself on beat 1, and then the right hand comes on beat 2. And remember, make sure the G and the left hand are together. And then measure 3 is by itself, and then measure 4 together. So once we do hands together, now here's the only trick. If you put the staccato, you don't want to go. You actually want to hold those down. So that's hard to do. holding one hand staccato in the other. So if you really want to do that, now you don't have to, but I do think it goes a long way. Just practice going. First off, you can practice taking away the grace note for a moment. Practice just doing this. So it's sinking into the G, holding on to it. Oh wait, this should be, I'm sorry, C and A. Popping off. So you're light in the left hand, heavy in the right hand. You can really overdo it if you want. See what I'm doing? And then add the grace note. So it's this feeling of being heavy and then being light. And that's something you can practice, away from the piano. You can practice on your lap where you sink in, but you pop off when you tap your lap with both hands. So it's just coordination. It's working the brain. And you can do the same thing on a tabletop. So it sounds really cool when you do that. So when you have that short in the left, holding in the right, it adds a little more dimension to the music, actually. So really, really cool. So you are going to see these grace notes again at the bottom of page 108 in the last measure. In fact, it's the same pattern with the left hand there as well. So like I said, the second line, second measure is where the melody begins. The left hand... Well, since the left hand is actually very similar throughout this page, let's look at it. Your left hand continues the same pattern. And then it ends on beat 1 with a C and G in that last measure, and then you're off. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and off. And then when you go down to the third line, it's the same thing. But this is a little different on the second measure. C, G, C, A, back to C, G, and then off. And then here, in the last measure, it's a F and an A. Now, you would expect to just do 2 and 1. 2 on the F and 1 on the A. That's where my fingers are. But they want 4 and 2. So if this happens, that means it's preparing you for something coming up. So you got F and A, 4 and 2 on beats 1 and 2. And then you got F and G with your fourth and third finger. And then the bottom line, and this is what it was preparing us for, D and C. Obviously you need 5 and 1. D and C, rest, and then D and B. And remember, that's a B natural, right? We are in the key of C, so if it's not marked flat, it is a natural. Rest on beat 4, and then you're back to on the first ending. And when you repeat, you just keep going. So that's basically it. There's not a whole lot to that left hand. Now, when you put the right hand with it, after we learn the right hand, obviously that's going to get super tricky. So the right hand has the melody on the second line, second measure. You've been playing up here. Now, beat 4 of that first measure, you're up here, and then you got to jump down to the thumb on E. So you may need to practice that. That's a big jump. It's a big jump. Now, when you aim for the E, you could come up here, and the reason for this, you can use the E flat as sort of a stopper, sort of a wall. If you aim for that, you get the E. Now, most of us will probably go down here, and that's fine. But if you're having a hard time with it, you can feel that E flat there, and I think that will help guide you. Now, I'm not going to do the swing just yet, but I will in a moment. I think I want to incorporate the swing sooner than later. But let's just break this down with the notes and just a steady counting. So the notes in this measure first are E, F, F sharp, and G. Now, here's the hard thing about this. These 4 notes, look at my fingers. Look how tight that is. You got to get used to that. So this is the kind of style where you have lots of flats, lots of sharps, accidentals, naturals, and things aren't even. When I say even, the beginning of this book, 5-finger C position, very even spread. here we are. Welcome to your last lesson. Everything feels totally different. So get used to that. You might be wanting to try different fingers or crossing under or something. Not yet. It's not marked, but it is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that rhythm is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So that G is tied for quite a while. You play it on the and of 2, you hold it 3 and 4 and it's tied into beat 1 of the next measure, but it's only the first half of beat 1. The second half of beat 1, you're going to play it again with your thumb, and the reason the thumb comes under is so you can reach all these notes because you're going up to this high D. So going back to the second measure, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Notice these 5 notes on that last measure on the and of 1 and 2 and 3 and. 5 notes. There's our even spread, G position. So those 5 notes are just going right up the ladder. And 2 and 3 and go back to C on 4. But then the last note of the line, jump down to the thumb on E. Third line, first measure, 4 on A, 3 on G, and that one's tied for a really long time. So that one on the third line is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and then off. So all the way through beat 1 on the next measure. Let's put that together. Second measure, second line. We got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and you're off. So playing the left hand is actually going to help fill in those long holds that your right hand's playing. Now, I want to do that much with the swing. So I've been doing the straight count of 1 and 2, and we're going pretty slow right now. This is going to be a fast song, but it's slow right now. So swinging it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So let's do that. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. So you're off on 2 and. Now during that rest on the third line, second measure, use it to readjust the hand. You're going to go to 5 on A on beat 3. So there you got A, G, second finger on E, and the last measure, thumb on D. So that's going to be 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Going down to the bottom line, we got a rest, an eighth rest on beat 1. Now your fingers are already in position for these notes. 3 on F and 5 on A. That comes in on the and of beat 1, and you got quite a few of them. I'm going to go back to the straight count for this. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. That moves to the G, and then on beat 4, second finger on E, and then the first ending, thumb down on C. You're going to hold that for 5 counts. And then the end of the end of the last measure, on beat 2, you jump up. And this is our F sharp to G on beats 2, 3, and 4. So going back to the beginning of the bottom line, F and A, 3 and 5, we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when you're counting, make sure beat 2, 2. Make sure that G's on 2. So 2 and 3 and 4 and. I was trying to break this up so you could hear 2 and that G comes in on beat 2. Not the grace note, but the G. Now the bottom line, let's do that with the swing. How about a little count off, just a little bit. So 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Now once you get to the first ending, Nothing there that you play is going to be affected by the swing. Remember, swing is only affected by whatever comes in on the ands. So that long C on beat 1, it's on beat 1, so it's not affected. These are always on beat 2, 3, and 4. They're not affected. So only things that are on the ands, because the ands, remember, and swing are shifted closer to the next beat. Now let's go back and put the right hand together from the second line, second measure. I'm going to give a count off, so maybe you can play along with me. And I'm going to do swing. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 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 and 2. So you see it goes right back. So be ready once again to jump down to that E. Good. All right. So we've got the notes. We've got the swing. We're going slow. We need to put the right hand with it, which means we actually need to break it back down. So remember the right hand. Most of it's this pattern. These are quarter notes, right? The right hand's playing, the left hand's got quarter notes. The right hand's playing eighth notes. It's 2 eighth notes to quarter note, right? Let's do it without the swing. Let's do it without counting, actually, because we need to coordinate where you're playing together and where you're not. So it pretty much alternates, like both hands, right hand, both hands, right hand, because the right hand's playing twice as many notes. So there's beat 1, and then the right hand, and then beat 2, the right hand, and now it's tied, so it's just left hand. Next measure, and on the and, remember you go up. Now in beat 2, no left hand. Not until the next measure on the next line. So both hands, right hand, and then left hand, left hand, left hand, left hand, left hand, but you're off now in beat 2, so we're in the second measure. Remember to come off the right hand on beat 2. Both hands on beat 3. No left hand on beat 4. You got to shift your left hand now for the last measure. Both hands. And then the bottom line, it is the left hand, and the right hand comes in, but then you rest in the left hand. And then both hands on beat 3. Beat 4, rest in the left hand, and then first ending, both hands together. Jump up here for beat 2, 3, 4, and then you repeat. Now let's do it with some counting. I'm going to hold off on the swing first. So this is very slow. I'm going to do it very slow. So back to the second line, second measure. We got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So don't rush these. They're full quarter notes, right? That's why we're counting with the ands. 3 and 4 and. So once again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see how this works, and why the counting is so important. When you're not playing busy eighth notes in the right hand, it's so easy to rush your left hand. But you got to keep the counting and keep those quarter notes. Now, let's do it with a swing. Keep it a little slower, but we're going to do it with the swing. Same spot. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 repeat. So at that point, if you're able to play those hands together with the swing at that speed, you're actually doing really, really, really well. So at this point, if you're not there, you may need to pause the video at a few places and practice notes and fingering, and of course the coordination between the hands. Now, the reason in this video I'm taking this in sections like this instead of going right hand the entire piece is, for one, I'm splitting this video into 2 lessons, but this song is kind of built in sections, so it works out actually to do it like this. Now, when we get to page 109, it's actually a very different, it's almost a different piece. I mean, it's the same style and everything, but when it changes keys, a lot more than that changes. So another reason why I'm splitting this up. Now, when you get to the bottom of page 108, the second time through, so you've done the repeat, and you've played the bottom line first measure, remember you're going to skip that first ending, those 2 measures, and go straight to the top of page 109. Now, let's start right there with the right hand. So you got C, just like you were going to play on the first ending, right? You still go into C for 5 beats. But in the second measure, you're going to jump up to E and C, and that's the C above middle C. On beats 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, our next measure, you are in the key of F. Now, you don't need to know that so much as you need to know that all B's are now going to be flat. And we're going to see it right away. So our first 4 notes, and this is a stretch. You're still on this C, but you got to stretch to 4 on A. Now, don't feel like you need to do this. In fact, you don't want to hold the C while you hit the A. Walk off of it or roll your hand. But you're playing C, A, F, C, which, by the way, is an F chord. F-A-C is an F chord. So we're in the key of F, F chord. We're just doubling the C's in it. So once again, but it's not disfingering. It's not 3 on A, it's 4 on A. So C, A, F, C. And then here's our first B flat with our 4th finger, followed by G with the 3rd finger, and then E and C. So that's a little tricky. You may need to practice this a while. And then when you execute it with the swing, it's going to be even more challenging. That's not easy to do. That takes some fancy, confident finger work. But just practice your notes first, and your fingers. So C, A, F, C, B flat with your 4th finger, G, E, C. Now, when you go down the second line, you got to jump up a little bit. 2 on the F. And then you got G, A, and you're going to shift your hand a little bit to do this E and C with 1 and 5. Now the second measure repeats what we did at the top line last measure. C, A, F, C, B flat, G, E, C. And then again, you've got 2 on F, F, G, A, but here it's going to be E flat and C. So when you did E natural, look at my hand. Easy, I could just go right there, right? When I go to E flat, look at my hand. See? Got to jump up. So if you play more into the keys, like I've said before, now, you're not going to get there smoothly. You can't do this. Not easily. Jump. Jump up. It's fine. It's not meant to be an ultra smooth piece. There are no slurs written in here outside of those grace notes. Now when you go to the third line, your 5th finger is on this C. You're going to take it up to F. You got 2 Fs. E, F, E, D. We'll get to the rhythms in a little while. Next measure, you're going to drop down to F and C. And then it's just C, B natural, back to C. Now this one's awkward. F sharp and B flat. It's rare that we see a sharp and a flat together. But look what it is on the keyboard and focus on that. It's just the first black key and the 3rd black key in the 3 black key set. So if you memorize that, I think that's easier than trying to read F sharp and B flat and comprehend sharps and flats all in the same moment. So again, you got F and C, C, B natural, C. There's those two black keys, and then 3 on A. Now here you got a big jump. So there's a lot of these jumps. This page is going to be harder. This page is harder, especially with this right hand. Fifth finger comes down to A flat. Now the fifth finger on A flat is going to take some getting used to. It's our smallest finger, and it's played on a black key, which is smaller than a white key. The surface area is smaller. You would think that works fine, actually, but to see the pinky is kind of weak for this. Now you can do the weight of the hand, but if you use too much weight, you see what happens? You fall off. So you might have to curve it a little bit so you get the strength of the tip of the pinky, the fingertip. That's probably the key to maintain control. You got 5 of these A flats, 1 and 2 and 3, and so you go to third finger on F, 2 on D, and then the last note is a B natural with your thumb. Last line, you're going to jump up slightly to F and A flat with 3 and 5. Again on beat 2, and then an 8th note, moving to E and G, which is going to be 2 and 4. And then you're essentially repeating everything again. So you're back on the C, A, F, C, B flat. Don't forget the B flat because of our key signature. G, E, C, and then F, G, A, E, and C. And we'll stop it there for now. So let's go through and do that with rhythm. So I don't think I need to go over the second ending, the top first 2 measures, because that's just, 5 beats and then beats 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to start right at the key change, last measure, top line. I'm going to do it without the swing first. So 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so that kind of throws us off guard there. You got a tie, so it comes in on the and of beat 2, and you're holding all the way throughout the rest of the measure. So don't rush it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and hold it out. Going on, we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and it's the same exact rhythm. The only thing different is the E flat. Otherwise, all that's the same. Now it gets a little tricky. We jump up 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So dotted quarter note, we haven't had one of those yet, I don't think. So that sneaks up on us. So once again, that measure is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the next measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and. A lot of things changing there quickly. Going from 2 notes to 1 note. So 1 and 2 and then this happens quickly. So again, focus on the 2 black keys. Don't focus on F sharp, B flat. Memorize it here. Either look at it or memorize it by feel. This whole measure is sort of sinking in on itself. F and C. And then you get a little tighter with F sharp, B flat, and you end up on A in the middle. So that's another way you could look at learning and memorizing that. The rhythm on that measure is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You got that big jump. That's a hard one. 5 to the A flat. So landing on it's tricky. You don't want to slip off of it, right? So the trick to that is leaving the dotted quarter note just ahead, just a little bit. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I leave it on the and of beat 4. That's a little trick, a little cheat, but it works. And then therefore I can get onto the 5 on the A flat confidently and right on beat 1. 1 and 2 and 3. So 5 A flats. They're all A flat. Same flat in our measure. They all stay the same. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. So we're at the bottom now. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You get a little quick change right there with the fingers. And then when you go on, like I said, we repeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and there's where we'll talk about our page turn, but we got to wait and talk about it till after we get the left hand involved, because then we'll decide how we will handle that. Now with the swinging, still going to do the right hand. Let's do it with the swinging. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now if you're having a hard time with this counting and the swinging, I would advise you to go through and write in the center, probably just above the lyrics, write in all the counting for every note. That way you have that visual that can keep you organized. So I just write, the big numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, wherever they line up. And for ands, I just use a plus sign. You could write, I just wouldn't write the word and. That's just too much time and it gets too crowded. But usually a plus sign for and in music is pretty good. Okay, let's look at the left hand now. So when you get to the top of page 109, you're still doing this pattern on the second ending. But it's a little different. Didn't go up to the B flat, not yet. So that actually sneaks up on us. Be careful about this. C and G, C and A, back to C and G, and then C and A before on the second measure, finally C and B flat. And then you rest on beats 2, 3, 4, and then F and A. So now we're at the last measure. All B's are going to be flat. We got F and A on beat 1, rest on 2, and then here's our first B flat. C and B flat on beat 3, rest on beat 4. Now the next measure on the second line is the same notes, but different rhythm. 1 and 2 and. So you see it's the same notes, same fingering, no rests, but we have a different count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So 1 and 2 because 1.5 beats, it's a dotted quarter note. And then we're tied. And if you look at the right hand, you're tied with the right hand. So both hands are going to be playing and holding together there. Now it's the same thing as we continue. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then 1 and 2 and, but it stays on the F and the A in the last measure, but it's the same rhythm. 1 and 2 and again, and 3 and 4 and your left hand's holding. Now we get a little tricky here. Third line down. Bottom note is a B, but key signature B flat. So B flat, F, and G. Got that on 1, and then we rest. And then this chord, I don't believe we've ever played this before. You got a B natural, an F, and an A flat. Now compare it to this chord, because I don't want you to learn so much what this chord is right now or reading the notes. I want you to memorize what you're going to after you play this chord. So your fifth finger slides down to a B natural. Your middle note stays the same, the F. Your thumb slides up to an A flat. So, see the positioning? Black, white, white. And then it's white, white, black. The top note moves down from black to white. The bottom note moves from black to white, half step. Top note moves up, half step. And a twist of the wrists is another way to do it. Twist your wrists, right? Now, I'm not going to twist it that much, but I'm showing you what can help you memorize this. So that's what I would focus on. Not so much what's going on in the music, what's going on with your hands and your fingering and how you're going to memorize it there. And you have a rest. So 1 and 2 and 3. And notice during the rest, I'm already there. I'm thinking ahead of time. So I'm right there on beat 3. And then you rest on 4 and. Now in the next measure, they don't give us the fingering on C and A, but I think I would just do 1 and 5. And then you rest on beat 2. On beat 3, D and C, I would do 1 and 5 there. Rest on beat 4, and then you have B naturals in the next measure. D and B, rest on 2, and then D and B on beat 3, and then rest on 4. Now when you go down to the bottom line, you've been playing D and B, you're going to play D flat and B, still B natural. So that's on beats 1 and 2. And remember the twist of the wrist? Well, you're going to go to C and B flat. Watch my hand. See what I did? Opposites. So when you go to D flat and B natural, and when you go to C and B flat, the D flat goes to the C, the B natural goes to B flat. So it's another one of those situations where focus more on what's happening down on the keys with your hands and your fingers. And that'll be easier to learn. So you got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the next measure we got F and A. So you're essentially repeating what you had at the top of the page last measure. C and B flat on beat 3, and then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's put the hands together. I will take it from the second ending on the top of 109. Not going to do the rhythm so much yet. I'm going to focus on where the hands play together. Now, there are a lot of rests on this page on the left hand, more than on the first page. So be careful with the lefts. Don't hang on to your chords. So the beginning of 109, remember the left hand plays this twice before going to C and B flat, and then it's all right hand on beats 2, 3, 4, and then we come together, and then rest on beat 2, all together on beat 3, rest on 4 in the left hand, and then together. And remember, you're going to hold that out. We'll count it a little bit later. And then going on, together, resting, together, resting, and then together. Third line, all together, and then rest on beat 2, together on beat 3. Now when you come off on 4, you're still holding your right hand, so that's a little tricky. 3 and 4, and then together on the next measure. Rest on 2, and then together on 3. Same thing, holding your right hand, but you're off on 4, and then together. Off on beat 2, together on beat 3, off on 4, and then together, together, and then repeat. Got it? So it's always the same place in the left hand where you have rest. It's always on beat 2 and beat 4. All right, so now that you've gotten used to putting the hands together, let's do it with a little bit of counting. So going back to the second ending, I'm going to do it without the swing. So I'm going to do a straight count first. So I'll give us a little count off. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 I messed up a little bit on the third line for as a measure. I held right there. I didn't lift my left hand on beat 4. So you start off like really easy, and you've got these quarter notes, which feel so long. Once you're hitting eighth notes, it feels like it's really speeding up. So, there we're going pretty slow at the beginning, but when you get to that last measure, it feels like it really picks up. So, again, that's why we're counting and why we're counting with and. So we recognize that and don't speed up quarter notes and slow down eighth notes, but do keep everything right in tempo. Now let's do it with the swing. Okay, so I'm going to start at the same place. I'm going to take it about the same tempo. So about 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 all right. Now let's go over to page 110. Take the right hand. Let's look at the notes. Now some of this still repeats. Actually, a lot of this repeats. So we got the C, A, F, C, B flat, still in our B flat key signature, our F major, G, E, C, F, G, A, and here's our E flat and C. We're still going to jump up to Fs, F, F, E, F, E, D. Second line, drop down a little bit, F and C. I think this is different than before, because I think we had just C as our second note. Now we stay on F and C twice. B natural, C, F sharp, B flat, and then A. Drop your hand down to F and A flat. And then a third time on beat 3, and then F, D, B natural, and then the last measure of the second line. This is different. A flat, F, G, F, tied, and then F and G. And then we're heading back into, this may sound familiar, and a lot of it is. A lot of it's a repeat. So lesson 87B will probably end up being a shorter lesson than this one because of that. But it does change a bit on page 111. Now our left hand is pretty much going to be the same thing too. At the top of 110, you got F and A. And a lot of these rests are again on beat 2 and beat 4. C and B flat on beat 3, rest on beat 4, and then F and A, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So same thing we had on the previous page. And then the last measure, remember this chord? B flat, F, and G. And then that little twist of the wrist, On beat 3, we rest, and then second line, C and A, rest, and then D and C, rest, and then D and B natural, rest, D and B natural again, rest, and then one more time, and then C and B flat. So it's a little trickier here because you're going from D down to C. That's a whole step. You're skipping D flat, but your B is going to B flat. That's a half step. So again, on beat 1, you got D and B natural, and then C and B flat, and it's only an eighth note. So you gotta be ready to move to F and A, and I just use my second and thumb. And then you're gonna end it on beat 4, D and B natural. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's put the hands together at the top. And again, all this should feel familiar. This is pretty repetitive. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This is a hard jump, by the way. I don't think I explained that in the last page, but we talked about it hand separate in the right hand, how you got to jump up to 5, but this, now actually what you can do is your F is sort of your anchor. See my hand? Here's the F and the A, and then going into B flat, F and G, twist the hand a little bit. So that's how you can work that. But that's still a tricky spot, making this jump. So going on, the last measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that last measure is different. So again, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and, because it's tied, and then 4 and. So you may need to practice that a little bit more because that is different. Now, let's talk about this page turn. I'm going to start at the bottom line of page 109, and I'm actually going to play this up to tempo with the swing, or at least a little bit faster. So I got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then I'm trying, I almost hit my microphone. I didn't have enough room to turn the page. So I mentioned earlier that you could use the pedal, and you could do that So here's the thing, which is really cheating, but it kind of works. I mean, this is like really stretching it, but the audience wouldn't know. So you could use the pedal. Now, if I'm counting and I'm going fast, this is how long I have. I only have 2.5 beats to hold this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and see what I did? I wasn't finished turning by the time I got to beat 1. But what's happening musically there? It's holding. It is holding, right? There is like a pause in the music. Now, we talked about how you never want to put pauses hardly in music, especially a piece like this. But this is where you're really cheating. So let's say you do that. So I'm going to start in the second measure here. Here's the cheat. If you hold it that first time, and honestly, it's not ideal. I don't love it. I'm not going to highly recommend it. But did you see what I did at the top of page 110? Right there. I held it there as well. And that's the awful cheat. Because if I'm holding it that first time, and it's kind of like the audience would be like, huh, that didn't feel right. And then the idea repeats itself, right? At the top of the page. And if you hold that one, then the audience is like, oh, okay, that's the way it goes. Okay, that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that. I actually like that. All right, that's a stretch saying they may actually like that. But you see where I'm going? I've done this many times, and it's an awful, awful cheat. And you could do this when you make a mistake. Again, I'm not encouraging this. I'm just saying this is another little tool in the toolbox. Not a tool that you want to access often. But there's been a time or two in performance I'll make a mistake. And a lot of times ideas repeat themselves, right? Like I just said at the top of page 110. Here's 110. Here's the idea again. So if the idea repeats itself, I'm going to do the same thing again. Now, if it's an awful sour note, I'm not going to hit an awful sour note again. But if it's a rhythmic mistake, or if it's a good wrong note, or something that you can kind of stretch a little bit. So you see where I'm getting at? So that is one option with your page turn. I know I was supposed to be talking about page turn, and now I'm all of a sudden turning this into a how can I cheat lesson. But that is an option. Because I can't turn this fast enough. Now, actually, I could with my right hand. Here's the other thing. I like to do this. Actually, I haven't done that. See what I did? I folded the bottom of the page here, created this little lip, because then I can grab it. I should grab it with my right hand. Tell you what, I'm going to move my microphone over a little bit. I know you can see it there, but because I was reaching for that, I was going to nail my microphone. Let's see if this works. So I've got this folded up so I can easily grab it with my right hand. Let's try it. Yes, I can essentially do it. I can do it fast enough. Absolutely. So that's still not easy. That takes a lot of work. But what I had to do was, one, not only did I know my music really, really well, so of course this is after you've learned everything, I actually had the next page memorized where I'm going. Right? Because my hand is leaving the piano. So I'm not going from E and C to C. I'm going from E and C to turn the page to, I got to get back to C. And I got to know where my left hand's going too. So I really got to have that memorized where I'm going. Because once I turn the page, boom, I don't have time to read it. You got to have it memorized. Now you can write it down in the margin of that first page. You could say, go back to the C for the right hand, go back to the F and A for the left hand. But that works. I got to move my microphone again, but I can also do it with my left hand. Actually, I feel more comfortable doing it with my left hand, to be honest. Because then, well, you got to have that pedal down. Yeah, so actually I prefer to do it with the left hand, to be honest. But what makes all the difference in the world is if you flap the corner here, because then you have something to grab. If you don't have that flapped, it's almost impossible. So that gives you 3 options. Now there was a 4th option, but it's not great. You drop out some part of your left hand. Now this actually ends up being the most common option that I go to when I'm turning a page, is I got to leave out one of my hands. You definitely don't want to leave out your right hand in this case because it's the melody. So it's not ideal to drop out the left hand either because there's a space in the music. And you may drop out the whole measure if you have to. But if you do it with confidence, then the audience knows it's okay. Like, you know, they're not worried about it. They're not like, oh no, he lost his left hand. Oh my, kind of thing. No, confidence means and I drop off my left hand there too if you wanted to go as far as say, hey, let me do that idea twice. Then it looks like that's the way it was written. But you noticed how, I mean, I really played that, if I'm to be technical, a little bit louder. And that's what I mean by confident. I'm kind of like playing along like, hey guys, that's the way it's written. You know? So, and that's the main thing when you play in general, that if you have to do little things, even if you don't have to do little things, you play it like, that's the way it's supposed to go. That's part of the game, let your audience think that's the way it goes. Don't make them think you're struggling or certainly cheating. So that actually gives you 4 options. But my number one recommendation is, 1, just simply copy the music and have 4 pages across. If you don't want to do that and you want to do page turns, make sure you bend the corner of your page so you can grab it. In this case, since you have the hold, use the pedal. You got to use the pedal to hold it, and then that'll be the only time in this piece you use pedal, except for the very end, which will be in our last lesson. So that's how you can deal with page turn. That's pretty much how you can deal with page turns in general, which you'll see a lot more of them coming up. Now, I don't do the photocopies because, 1, I deal with a lot of music that has 6, 8, 10 pages of music. So I don't have room to spread out that much paper. So I end up just using the method where I flap the corner here and just turn it. And like I said, I usually leave something out in one of the hands. In this case, since it's holding, I got time. And I think because you have something holding, I don't think you have to worry about the break now. I think there's enough time. But that makes a difference, bending the page. All right, so we've covered everything. Now we're going to put it together. I'm going to play the whole thing for you. I'm going to start at the very beginning. I'm going to do the repeat on page 108. I'm going to go on to 109 and go through 110 and stop at the end of this lesson, which will be the end of the second line. I'm going to do it on the slower side first, and then I'll show you how fast this piece can go and how it's a ton of fun, but it's ridiculously hard to get it to that point. But I'm going to do a slow count off, and I am going to do it with the swing from the very beginning. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 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 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we'll stop right there. So even at that slower speed, it's actually a lot of fun, especially when you put in the swing. So the only reason I would do it without swing, honestly, is to learn it first without swing. But I would highly recommend that you learn this piece, even if it ends up being slow, with the swing, because that really is the style. Without it, it's just... It feels like it's something that wants to go somewhere, I mean, it's Chattanooga Choo Choo, so I don't know the history behind the piece, but obviously it's just a piece that wants to get moving, sort of like a train, right? All right, now I'm going to show you how much fun this can be if you play it really fast. It says moderate swing rhythm, so it's not meant to be played super fast, but I love playing this fast. Now, I'm not going to play it perfectly. I'm going to probably miss a rest or two, some fingering and stuff. But just to show you how much fun you could have if you spend a lot of time on this. So I'm going to give us a fast little count off, and then I'm going to go. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... And then it keeps going. Now, if you want to know how the song ends, you got to come back. You got to come back for our last lesson, which will be 87B. So hopefully I get that up really soon. But this is the end of lesson 87A. This one, like I said, is going to be a lot longer than the previous one. Than the next one. We've been about 1 hour and 15 minutes on this, which is actually pretty good for a piece like this. I didn't break it down as much as I used to, but you are at the last piece in level 1. So at this point, a lot of this should be coming a little bit easier for you. And when I say a lot of it, I mean like the basics, the notes, understanding fingerings. When it's marked, you just do that finger on that note. Understanding rhythms a little bit more. Some of the hardest things still with the rhythms is going to be implementing that swing. But just remember 1 and 2 and 3, whatever comes in on an and just gets shifted. It comes in slightly later, right? Long, short, long, short, long. And then, things that are just habits that a lot of us do. We don't mean to, like holding through the rests in our left hand. We understand quarter rests. We understand what it means. It's just we're so busy thinking about the right hand, perhaps, that our left hand keeps holding through rests. But that's holding through the style. You don't want to do that. You don't want to affect that style. Of course, the grace notes is sort of the new thing we learned. We had them briefly earlier in the book, but they didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. And then, of course, the ability to go from, C major to F major and then eventually back, as well as all our other accidentals, sharps, flats, naturals, and learning about, when you see a chord and how it's written on the page, how to focus more on how it looks on the piano, because that ultimately is how you're going to memorize it. So these two chords on page 109, third line, first measure, don't look like the easiest, and they're not. So if you focus on the movement here, that's what's going to help memorize it. All right, so I wish you all the best on lesson 87A, and then we will look at 87B, and we'll finish out the piece, and we'll put the whole thing together, and that will be it. That will be the last piece for level 1, and if you look on page 112 in your book, not everyone's book, I'm learning, is quite the same, so I hope this is in your book, but you do get a certificate of award, so I encourage you to put your name on it and hang it on your refrigerator or wherever. So stay tuned. We'll get lesson 87B in there, and then we'll talk about what we need to do to prepare for level 2. And of course, the first thing to do if you haven't is order that level 2 book. So it is the Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course lesson book, level 2. There is an all-in-one book, which can work. There are different editions, I'm learning. Mine doesn't say what edition it is, so I never saw that until after I made that video introducing this book, so I apologize for any confusion. All I see here at the bottom, it says copyright 1983, and then 1996, but that's, I'm guessing, just the renewal of the copyright. I'm not sure that's a different edition or anything. So, but that's probably the first thing you can do to prepare for level 2 is go ahead and order the Basic Adult Piano Course Lesson Book Level 2 book. And like I said, I'll put some more information out, probably even make a video on what to do and how to prepare for those level 2 lessons when we get to them. All right, thanks again, guys. Look forward to this final lesson any moment now. I'll have it posted, and wish you all the best. Thanks again.